welcome to the next episode. I think this is going to be an absolute banger of the Mind Management Mentors podcast. I always try and get different guests onto the show. When it comes to the mind, I will always say this. I say this in my videos on my day-to-day basis. If it's in the mind, it can be managed. If it's in the mind, it can be managed. Today, we had a breathwork chat before with our previous guests, and today we're going to be talking about much more than breathwork. We're going to be talking about some fabulous things. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Susan, tell them who you are and what you do.
Hello. So my name's Susan Watson. I am a holotropic breathwork facilitator. I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist. I was also trained by the late Bob Proctor, so have done a lot of mind growth. I also do a lot of work with ego and consciousness expansion. So I first started off in consciousness expansion. I can't say that. I was going to say I can't say that when I've had a drink, but I don't drink, so that's good. But I think I started off wondering about the mind. The mind has fascinated me for years, like since I was a wean. It's fascinated me. So when I got this opportunity to learn Bob Proctor's stuff and then to be taught by Bob, I was like, this is awesome, but there was so much more. So I started off on one path saying it's all mindset. And then I've went, actually, it's more than mindset. It's about raising your consciousness. It's about transcending ego, which not many people get to do. But if you're aware that it can be done, then it's possible, because anything's possible, right?
Everything's possible. Absolutely. Now, for a lot of people, you've dropped a big name. I come from that space, so I understand that. But you've mentioned Bob Proctor. I know that's the secret. I know that's manifestation. But just expand more on who Bob Proctor is, the program that you were on, and how it helped or made you see that there's different things in life, and what brought you to The Secret or Bob.
So I read The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, which is still a phenomenal book, but the better one is The Greatest Secret. That's tremendous. So I read that, and I remember sitting on the bus going to work, because I used to work in Prudential, in human resources and Stirling, and they put on free buses. And I remember sitting on the bus in the morning thinking, you have to be joking me, this is not my life. Never ever liked corporate, never liked human resources. I just thought, what is this? And then when I read The Secret, and I used to listen to it on Audible and just be really rude on the bus and not speak to anybody. And I was listening to it thinking, I want to live like that. That is The Secret. So that must have been about 9 years ago now. So that started me on my journey. And then I started learning from a gentleman called, oh, what's his name? His name will come back to me, but it wasn't Bob. John Kehoe. I got, and he's not a big name. He's amazing, but he's not a big name. So I started listening to him, and then of course I went down the rabbit hole of YouTube, and Bob Proctor came up. And then, funny enough, something came up on my Facebook to do Bob Proctor's course with one of his consultants. So the course is called Thinking into Results, and you think into your results.
Yeah.
So I started that in November one year with a lovely lady called Karen. And I've still got Bob's book, but I don't have it here with me. And you basically work through this program with this consultant for 6 months. And you go through, like, everything to do with the mind and how to manifest and make a different reality. That was in the November, and it would have been when we were heading into lockdown. And then, no, we would have been in lockdown. I can't remember if we were in lockdown. It's irrelevant. But then in the January, my world fell apart, because my husband, and we had been together for about 12 years, said to me, like, that's me, I'm off. And I was like, yeah, where are you going? No, I'm leaving. I was like, yeah, where are you off to? And he's like, no, it's me, I'm leaving. I'm off. I'm going. And I was like, but where? So this went on for about 5 minutes. And then I was like, So you're like, leaving. He was like, yeah, I'm leaving. And he did. That was him, left the house, left our business. We had a property letting business that we owned properties and let out. We don't have kids, but we had 2 dogs. I had my dog grooming business. And that was him. He just up and left. And that was it. I was just meant to accept it. So, I was all over the place. Didn't know if I was, I didn't know if it was New Year or New York. And my nervous system just went into like overdrive. So I was like, I need to focus. I need something to focus on. So I really knuckled down into this thinking into results. I thought that'll help me. That will take my mind off things. That will help me get through this. And it did. And then in the May, I decided I wanted to be a consultant with Bob. So you pay quite a large sum of money, and then you get trained up to get that certification. And then I launched my coaching business. So I was then taking people through thinking into results. And I probably launched that, I think, July of that year. And it went really quickly. I was like, well, holy moly, I'm getting people here. And Bob was phenomenal. Bob started, he had nothing. He went to school for 2 weeks. He went just for 2 weeks, and he'd had no money. He was, he was living in poverty, didn't have any prospect. And somebody had introduced him to Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
So he read this book, Napoleon Hill. He read this book and started to implement what was being said and what was being taught in this book. And then his life started to change, and he kept thinking, well, how is my life? How is this happening? I'm not, I don't feel like he was just doing what Think and Grow Rich told him to do. And Bob's goal was to have a presence in every single country in the world. So that was his goal when he first set up his business, was to have a presence in every single country in the world. And the year before he passed, he had nailed that. He had got a presence in every single country. So he'd done it, but I mean, it took him, 50 years?
Yeah, that's amazing. And I did like Bob Proctor. And when I saw the original movie, I think I downloaded it, I'll even be honest. I remember downloading it off LimeWire or whatever it was back in the day, because it was hard to get stuff like that. I think it was from America. It was an American movie, and it was not something that we could get. I think I was in Fuerteventura. So that must be about 20 years ago, believe it or not, because that got me on cruise ships. I did my vision board and I did my goals, and I did get a job on cruise ships as cruise director. And I was like, wow, it does work. And I got my picture of a cruise ship. So that was the secret. I remember watching the video, and the funny thing is I always show my wife things. And my wife's like, that's pish. Whatever. You do you. She always say you do you. She never gets down for anything like that. I am the positive, upbeat one, and Carol is the very much a realistic person. She's phenomenal.
Right.
If I didn't have that little string round my ankle, I'd be the balloon that flew away. She's not a weight, she's a ground.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
I like the word using. She's very grounding. She's very good at grounding, but letting me fly when
Still letting you fly.
Yeah.
But she's just got that tether attached to you.
She's the tether. She's the tether that grounds me. And that's why we've always worked so well. And we talked before that we talked about the podcast, and what we're really going to talk about now is why personal development sucks.
And it does. It really does. Suck.
Personal development sucks balls. It does.
I think personal development, I think it screws a lot of people up. I think it makes out that you're broken and that you're seriously screwed up and you need to fix yourself. And I think it highlights the negative side of the human and the human mind, and very little attention is paid to the positive. So when I started my personal development journey, which was many years ago, like reading The Secret and listening to this gentleman called John Kehoe, but it just, I mean, it sends you on a down, you think you do personal development and everything's lovely and life's amazing, and it's not. It's not. The personal development industry is seriously screwed up. Seriously screwed up. And it doesn't need to be, because we're not broken. Nobody is broken.
Nope.
And
That
took me a while to recognize.
No one's broken. No one needs fixing. We've got misaligned thoughts. We don't understand our emotions, and we just need to be able to manage and work through those. And it's not about control, it's about understanding. I say this all the time with clients, whether in group settings or whether I'm working with them one-on-one. I literally will start with the amount of times you get into that pattern working when I'm like, do you think you're broken? She went, yeah, why is it you can understand that? I'm like, because everybody does. No,
Everybody.
yeah, you're not broken. Promise you, not broken. Let's just work on getting, right, okay. So my original start was, after my nervous breakdown, was the Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters.
Yeah.
Phenomenal book. So my first business was called Monkey Mind Relaxation. So whenever I'm working with clients, I'm always tell me about your conversations. No, I can't tell you about those. I'm like, no, it's your monkey mind. You're not going mental. I promise you. There's a difference. Let's just talk. Oh, well, this is what I do. Right, perfect. We'll start with that. We'll normalize that. We'll get that back on terms. And I thought that you brought a great part in when you mentioned about ego as well, because that's something that I'm always really aware of. And How to Detox Your Ego was a phenomenal book, because it does move away from that wanting to be the best, just being better every day. And I get that, but there is sometimes I'm always pulled into I want to be the best at something. One of my goals is to be the best at something. And I call myself, believe it or not, Susan, I call myself the UK's leading mind management coach as a goal, not a fact. As a goal, something to achieve, not as a fact. And I'll always say that in a lot of the video courses. I'm like, this is the reason I call myself the UK's leading mind management coach. As a goal, not as a fact. So that I will head towards that whenever I can. I'll be recognized as that. And it always gets a giggle. But personal development sucks.
It does. It absolutely sucks. And sometimes I even, not so much now, but there was a time when I was like, why am I doing this? And you know, I now can answer myself is because I want, and this is where Bob was different, because Bob was all about personal growth, not personal development. You see, I'm not a fan of Tony Robbins. Now, I might get lots of hate for that, but I'm not a fan. I can tolerate Tony for a few, maybe half an hour, and then I'm like, right, I'm done. I cannot do it. For me, just in my head, Tony Robbins is personal development. You'll go to a seminar, you'll feel amazing. He'll have you doing all this breathing and doing all sorts of things, and you'll feel great. But 2 days after an event, you're back to where you started. Nothing will have changed. Where Bob, it was consistent and it was personal growth. If you continue to do Bob's work and do the exercises and study and do what you know, whatever it is what you were going to do, there's no flipping option but growth. There's no option. So that's why I'm not a fan of people. Like I say, Tony Robbins is phenomenal, and he'll make you feel amazing for like 2 days, and then you go back to reality and you're like, all right, okay, well, that was lovely. Paid $5,000 for 2 days with Tony, and here I am. And then and like, so Bob's book was Think and Grow Rich, and I've got a copy, but the book that I study consistently and have done for years is The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard.
Right, nice.
Fantastic. So this goes everywhere with me. It's quite, this is like, I think it's 10 books by Neville. And see, there's my marker for when I was reading this morning. And I'll just study a chapter and it's written all over. And every time I read it, I'm like that. I never saw that before. Somebody's put that in because I didn't see that before. But the reason I tell you that is it was always one of Bob's non-negotiables is you must study. It's not about reading a book. I've got clients and like, Suze, I've read this book, what now? And I'm like, no, but did you read it? What did you learn from it? What have you embodied about it? And again, like from doing Bob's work, I wanted to learn more about how do you embody it? What makes the difference about actually reading something to doing something? What is that? You know, what is that part? And that was when like my path has gone quite a different route now. So still love Bob, still coach a lot of his work, but I've gone down like, I want to learn more about the ego and how the ego plays a part in this. I want to learn more about the unconscious and the subconscious and the superconscious. So it's like learning. So that's been my road for the last probably 2 years, is just understanding all about the ego and what part that plays in your life. And then bringing in all different levels of consciousness as well.
Yeah. Massive fan of consciousness. I got into Deepak Chopra for a long time. I used to cycle a lot. So on the bike rides, I was not on the roads. I used to go on the canal from Edinburgh to Glasgow. So it was a good 6 hour bike ride.
Okay.
No roads, so I could see exactly where I was going. Earpods,
Yeah.
AirPods. Listen to audiobooks. And we talked about something there, and I've said I'm very much aware of ego and sometimes how it appears in me. And I'm like, what's the difference between purpose and ego? Because purpose is something that I want to live and be and do and create my why. What's the difference between that and having an ego or a healthy ego that wants to make that happen? Because even though I know the intention is to make changes and be the light, there is definitely something that's going to come back that's going to inflate something that emotional importance for me.
Yeah. I think for me, so I've learned a lot about ego from an author called Eckhart Tolle. Have you heard of it?
Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, phenomenal book.
Love him. I think he's phenomenal. Byron Katie, because those two people have transcended above and beyond ego. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn from you guys. And I also, as I said to you before, I work with a lady. She's American. She's you know, when I first started working with her, I thought she was batshit. I was just like, this girl is crazy. But here I am 2 years on, still working with her. And I've learned a lot from her about ego, transcending ego and different levels of consciousness and how we can transcend. And I guess one thing that I have learned is everybody has ego. And I didn't know that. I thought, well, you've got an ego, haven't you? And you're very egotist. My mum would be like that. Aye, your ego, who do you think you are? So it was all that I thought, all right, only some people have ego then. But we all have ego, and
Everyone.
ego was gifted. Every single person. And it served a purpose, right? Years and years ago when we'd have to go and hunt for food. And if we didn't have ego, we'd get eaten by a lion or a bear or whatever. The thing is in this day and age, we don't have much that could harm us. So our ego is more a psychological problem now rather than a physical problem. So the way that I teach about ego, the most simplest thing is, if it causes you suffering, if you are suffering, if you are in fear, doubt, worry, stress, it's coming from ego. It's always coming from ego. And again, this is linked with consciousness as well, because when you start working with, I call it super conscious, but I also refer to it as God consciousness, Christ consciousness. But when you start bringing that into play, that only wants joy. That only wants you to have to be happy. Where ego, because that was formed at such a young age, and it's been, in fact, our ego starts forming from the moment that we're conceived. We can't, parts of our ego will already be inherited into us. But if you are feeling something and it's causing you to feel suffering, any emotion of suffering, that is coming from your ego. Where when we can start tapping into superconscious, which is God, Christ, energy, like pure force energy, whatever we want to refer to it as, because I couldn't say the word God a few years ago. I was like that. Oh no, I don't do all that. I don't worship God. But I've got over that now, because it's not a person sitting in the sky for me. It's just, it's a state.
We've all got, we're all attached to, I'm not religious, but I know that we're all touched to the higher being, tethered to the higher being. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
that is the only, on you go.
No, you go, please do.
I was going to say, your super conscious, that's how you create things. So if your goal is to get this, to get yourself as the best mind coach in the world, then You will need your ego. You see, this is where I'm like that. No, people will say ignore your ego. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Because if you ignore your ego, it's going to come back louder.
Yep.
And then if we befriend, then other people are saying, no, befriend your ego. I'm like, no, we don't want to be friends with it either. You have to find a way to work with your ego because we do need it and it does serve a purpose, but we have to be aware of it and where it can take us. When we're looking to create and you're looking to be the best mind coach in the whole of the world, you need to tap into your superconscious for that, because that's your creative power. Your ego and your human mind can only tell you what's happened or what is happening. It can't tell you what will happen. That's where we have to tap into superconscious and start using our beautiful faculties like our imagination, our perception, our will, to start actually working with superconscious to create. When we're working with ego, I know how to work with my ego. So I can speak, if I know when my ego's kicking in and I'm just like, not today, Toots. We're not playing that game today. I'm in charge. And that's how my ego will respond. Where if it's my ego from my inner child, then I'm a bit like, oh, there she goes. You're okay, pet. Have a little cry. You're fine. You're fine. Okay, love, let's move on. So it's working with, you need to, I believe, and what's worked for me is it's how you treat your ego. It's how you communicate with it. And then a lot of people will ask, like what you've just done, Cuddy, said, well, what's your purpose? So for me, you will know instantly what your purpose is, because the minute that you feel joy, so you talk very passionately about what you want to achieve.
Oh yeah,
that's your purpose, because it's bringing you joy.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of studying of, have you heard of Daryl Anka, and he channels somebody called Bashar?
Oh yeah, I love him. Love the guy.
Brilliant.
Bashar.
But no, it's brilliant.
I love
Bashar, what he'll say, follow your joy every minute of every day. Now I know that, and you're like that. Well, I've got a shitty job, and I've got to take the kids, and the dog's got the vet, and da. But he will always say, follow your joy, and that's your purpose. And it makes like I studied that for about a week because I was just like, how can that be? But when you are following your joy and your passion, then that's your soul. Your soul is guiding you. So if you're doing something you don't like and you're like, this is crap, I hate this, I hate my job, I hate this, that you're not living in purpose. So you don't need to find your purpose. You know your purpose, but you must listen to your soul. And that, see, I love animals, but I hated working with them.
Right, makes sense.
But I love being around them. But I don't want to, I hated working with animals. And I know, like, I love the breath work that I do because of the healing that it can do. And if you follow your purpose, your passion, follow what gives you joy, that is your purpose.
Now, thank you so much for sharing that, Susan. That was amazing, enlightening, loved it. Have you ever? I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have, but I have an inkling you might not have. So I always try in all the podcasts to throw in a book that everybody should read and they should talk about. And it's Power versus Force by Dr. R. Hawkins.
Yes.
And it shows everyone the scales of consciousness, the whole scale of consciousness for the vibrancy. Remember when I commented to you on your one of your posts, and I was like, vibrancy is a really big part, and how our emotions are actually what's going to stop us moving up and down that scale of consciousness. But people get stuck in shame and lack of hope and guilt, and they're extremely low vibrational emotions that somebody's feeding off. I'm going to say that. I'm not going to go any further, but that's a battery source for somebody.
Yeah.
We want to really start working, and the people like the Bashirs that come up in the world and stuff like that, there's something that they say at this moment in time now that if you want to vibrate out of, they used to say that gratitude was the highest vibrancy. Living in gratitude. Yeah. I think most people use gratitude wrong. I've said that before on my TikToks.
I agree.
Most people use gratitude when they've got something. Oh my God, I'm so grateful. I'm like, no, you should have been grateful when you didn't have anything. You've got to take that pill at a different time. That's a me thing. That doesn't have to be the rest of the world. But what they're talking about now, and it makes total sense when you see the Bashirs of the light of the world, is authenticity.
It's the
You
highest
will
vibration.
shine at authenticity. What's your
Yes.
thoughts?
I completely agree. I used to believe that with gratitude, but as you say, a lot of people use gratitude wrong, because the way I see gratitude is everything's already here. The world's created, the universe is created, so everything's already yours. They're just, the issue is, and this is like the law of attraction sucks. However, because the law of vibration is actually a higher law. And most people will not get the law of attraction to work because they don't understand the law of vibration. And that's a higher law. And gratitude is, I practice gratitude every day, not for what I have, because I've got it. So yes, I'm like, I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for my dogs, I'm grateful for my phone, but I'm also grateful for that, that beach house in Huntington Beach in California, because it's mine already. It's already mine. It's mine and I just need, I now need to receive it. And it's the receiving part that we must work on, because that's the part where you're like, I can't do that. How can I have a house in Huntington Beach? I don't have that money. I can't even afford, to go and get a tin of cola. And then that's the work.
Is that not ego? And that's the ego.
That's completely ego saying,
Yeah.
well, who do you think you are? You can't have that, Suze. What, a house £1 million or right on the beach? I don't think so, my love.
So I don't want to turn this to a coaching session, but that bit right there is definitely where I would always go into. Who's that voice? Because that's not yours. Who's that programming there? It'll be a family member, something when you saw years ago, like that voice right there. Who's that? Whose is that programming? Because that's what we need to work on.
Exactly. You're so right. Because it's suffering. I want that house. I'm so grateful for having that beach house in Huntington Beach. And then that little voice is like that. Really? That's causing me suffering. That's causing me doubt. That's causing me to feel I'm not worthy. Who the hell are you to go have a house on Huntington Beach? You can't do that. And that's where we need to do the work. That's where we have to figure out, well, where did that come from? Because it didn't, it came from when I was the age of whatever, and my brother turned around and says, you're a useless bum, Suze, you'll never, and the teacher when I was 8 said, you're terrible at English, you'll never get anywhere in life. And that's where it's coming from, and we eradicate that and we're good to go, because that's just all nonsense.
And that conversation, and for anyone listening to this, when it comes to the mind and the internal thought, I call it monkey mind. However people want to call it ego, or create a name, negative Nancy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Your mind will not know whether your teacher said you're not good at English, or you sat in English going, oh, I'm not very good at English. There'll be a connection made and a program stored that might not have even been the teacher. You might have just been sat, oh, I don't think I'm very good at English, but the teacher's talking about something else. So you just, your brain makes that connection. So we've got this enemy, the teacher. And if you ever spoke to the teacher, they're like, no, I never said that. I thought you were great at English. No way, but that's it. That's how the beliefs are formed.
Exactly. And it's just this little, Untethered Soul by
Michael Singer, phenomenal.
And he calls it your inner roommate.
Yeah, that's
your inner roommate. So yeah, it's and your inner roommate is, this is not a nice room, it's not going to, it doesn't always support you, and it's a little trickster. It is. It'll make.
That's not the word I would say. I know what word I would drop for that. I know I always say little Mister or little Missy Cunty. That's what I would say for that little internal voice. And that's what we're always working with a mind is understanding where just Susan, wow, what a phenomenal podcast. So Susan, you love breath work.
Love it.
What is it that brought you to that space of breath work while doing all this work that you've got going on in other areas? What was it?
Because so I'd explained how my husband had left, and I was all over the place.
Of course.
I went for counselling, and I thought, right, that's what I need. I need counselling. I went and I had 3 sessions. I was like, stuff this, not for me. It's just like I wanted to feel better. And I've done a lot of shadow work, as in work with my ego, and and nurtured it. So I understand that we need to go back and look at things, but counselling, no, not for me. And I was scrolling, as you do, on Facebook, and something came up to say, do this breath work. And I thought, yeah, I'll do that, thinking I was going to go into something similar to yoga breath. So I was very heavily into yoga at the time. And I thought, oh, yeah, I'll do all that, the alternate nostril breathing, and that'll be really nice. It'll just be nice and calming. Went along to the session, and an hour and a half later came out thinking, what the was that? What happened there? And that was the first introduction to holotropic breathwork. So it took me about 2 weeks, because I was in such a high stress state. My nervous system was all over the place. And it took me about 2 weeks to fully understand, to fully ground. So I was functioning, I was working and eating, but I was releasing a lot of emotions. I had, there was, as you can imagine, I had anger, I had shame, I had guilt.
Frequency, right?
Absolutely.
Resentment.
Oh God. And I remember waking up from this, and I heard my now mentor Brian saying to me, just come back. And I just lay there, and I was just like, what was that? And my body was shaking at one point. I had this terrible pain in the shoulder, which I now know was my throat chakra, which would make perfect sense.
Not being upset.
I cried a river, and then we do a release in holotropic breath work, because we build up all this energy. We find the energy that's stored. We find that frequency that's in us, that's causing us to self-sabotage, that's causing us anger, that's causing us fear, that's causing whatever. And it's not what, it's not often what, like in that first journey, yes, I had lots going on with my now ex-husband, but I'd brought up all these memories about what my mum said to me when I was 7 in the living room, and I was like,
Get
what?
stored. It gets stored.
So we need to release that. So we brought it all up, and we needed to release that, which is, we would do that by screaming. And then after that, and after about 3 weeks, Brian reached out and said, how you doing? I was like, I don't know what that was, but I need to learn it. And then that was me. So I think it was maybe about a year after that, I became a certified consultant, and started, I used it, but I didn't shout about it from the rooftops. And then it's been over the last maybe 6 to 9 months that I'm like, this stuff is awesome. So I started reading a book from a gentleman called Dr. Stanislav Graf, and I just call him Stan because I can say that. So Stan brought holotropic breathwork into the modern world in the 1960s. He's a psychiatrist, and he firmly believes, and goes against the grain with a lot of other psychiatrists, that you store memory from the minute of conception. You store memory. And a lot of psychiatrists will say, no, it's from when you're born. And he's like, no, you're wrong. And I have to agree with them, not because I'm a psychiatrist, but I was leading a holotropic breathwork experience. And I heard this girl starting to release, and I was like, gosh, we're quite early on, we're only like 20 minutes in. And I was like, right. So I thought I'd just keep an eye on her. And then within about 5 or 10 minutes, she was like really like experiencing something quite big. And she was wailing, like I was just like, holy. And the thing is we're not meant, I don't comfort people because I want you to release it. So I'm not a nasty bitch. It's just I'll stay with you and I'll hold you and make you safe, but I want you to release it. That's the whole freaking point. So this lady, oh God, it was just, I've never like, everybody else had headsets on. We do it 9-dimensionally. So they all had headsets on, but I knew that she was wailing and everybody was going to hear her, and it would frighten some people or distract people. So this went on for about 20 minutes. And I just sat with her and held her and let it all go. And so I said to her at the end, you need to tell me what the hell was going on. What did you see? And she had a traumatic birth herself. And she said she felt herself coming down the birth canal, and she was coming down bum first rather than head first. So coming down bum first, and she could hear mum screaming, and the doctors and nurses, and mum was panicking, and she was starting to panic. She couldn't get her breath, and she wasn't reliving it, but she could see it. She saw herself, and she'd carried all that tension, all that stress around with her all her life. And she was able to release that. She released all of that energy. And that, I was just like, that blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind.
I love how the mind works, and how I just think touching back on what you said about personal development doesn't work, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great headline for the podcast, just to get the attention. And I'll say that live in the podcast. That's the reason we create some of the titles that we have. But everything's possible, and
Yes.
everything works if you're ready to receive it. And
Absolutely.
that's an old Buddha thing. A Buddha says you're not ready to hear me until you're ready to hear me.
Yeah.
And that's the same with what you do with your book. You go back to your book. I was making that attachment there. It's like every time you go back to your book, you're like, oh, that wasn't there before. I'm like, no, you weren't ready for it. You're not
ready.
And me too, we're all on this journey, and you're not ready. And until you're ready, everything works until you're ready to make that change. And I think that's the thing with working with people. I know, and I'm sure you know things as well, Susan, but
Of course.
when you get into that world of coaching and training and counseling, you'll be like, oh God, I know these people need my help, but I don't want to go and say, do you need any help? Because then that creates you've got to create something so they come to you. And that's always the hard part for life coaches, counselors, therapists, is well, how do you create, and this is the mind management mentor part, I suppose, is once you have those skills as a mind management coach, life coach, whatever you want to call yourself, you have to create that story so they come to you. And that, to me, is what is the downside of the business.
Yeah.
And I think that's the downside. The downside is that you have to tell a story of, this is where I was. This is something you might be experiencing. You're technically semi-diagnosing from afar so that you attract these people into the programs and stuff like that. And that's an irk for me. Yeah. And I want to be really open and honest. Then I'd go back into it, but is that my language of fear? Because you've got this premise to be able to help people, and you want to bring them in, and that's I think personal development does work if you're ready. And most people go into it thinking they're ready, but they're not. And it's like you said, Susan, you seem to be going back in. Now I'm ready. Now I want to learn this. And that's what we do on this personal, and that's the journey. So maybe it should be called personal journey, not personal growth.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think personal development, it's all about, it's very focused on, let's fix you before we can move on. But sometimes it's like a lot of personal development, people want to go back and fix you. But you could be in the absolutely most fucking amazing place right now. You just want to develop for the future. You want to develop. You don't want to go back. But a lot of personal development is, let's go back and let's fix you. Let's take away all of the bad shit. And it's like, actually, you work from a different state of consciousness. You don't need to fix yourself. You just need to remember who you flipping are. You just need to remember that you're not your body. I'm not Susan. My mind is just part of being here, having this physical experience. Actually, if I want to create and develop and go further and have growth and be something different, then I can't do that from this mind. I have to do that from a different mind.
Yeah.
I don't want to fix myself. I don't care if I've got a belief system. And that's another bugbear. Oh, you've got a belief system. Let's go and fit. No, let's just flip and leave it. Just leave it. Let's use a different part of our mind and let's go forward and still have that here. I call it an oscillating structure, where you'll go and you'll start moving towards your goal, and then something will go, you can't do that. You're not clever enough. So you come back to your comfort zone, you go off. That was a close call. I almost done something there that I'm not ready for. I'm going to fix myself and then I'll go forward. So you have a few months of just being stagnant, being stuck. And then you're like, right, I'm going to go again. So here I go. I'm making it inroads. I'm going for it. And then boom, something happens. And you go, shit, I'm not ready for this. I need to go back and fix myself. So you go back in and you fix yourself for a few months and you lick your wounds because it was awful traumatic. And then you're like, I'm going to try again. And you go, and all you're doing is going round and round and round and not actually going for your goal, because you're using a part of your mind that was never, ever designed to create. So we can have all our crap sitting here. I don't need to fix it. It's perfect as it is. but I don't need to work from that point. I get to work from this part. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. It's the left and right side of the brain. I love it. Absolutely. Susan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Your insights on why you believe personal development stops bores, as a lot of people do, will be great commentary. And this was a powerful, powerful episode. There's a definite authenticity to you, Susan. And I know I noticed that when we were chatting and having conversations. And I think that's extremely powerful for people to be around.
Yeah.
Authenticity. I had that conversation about authenticity, about the dipping group that I have.
Yeah.
And I did say we've got 5,000 people in there. And we have the best, in all fairness, we do have the best banter in our Facebook group. But it is quite vicious sometimes. And I'm like, you have to like the banter that we have at the Five Dippers. If you don't like, if I can't be myself in the group, which is jovial banter, and we do take the piss out of each other, then that group's probably not for you. But that's generally why we find the groups growing and growing, is it's authenticity. There will be
authentic,
it is being authentic. I can only, and I think when I'm not myself, it's when I'm not being authentic. And I think that's when I'm always, and that's the ego. And it's like, you're not being authentic. You didn't speak your mind. You didn't.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing. And I can definitely see how you own that, Susan. And that's why I said, let's jump on the podcast. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to share before we wrap up, Susan?
I think you're not meant to suffer. We're not put on this earth to suffer. I've thought that since I was a young child. I used to always look at my mum. My mum was a publican, so very hardworking. And she ran 3 pubs on her own. And I used to always think, and what are you doing? I thought, why are you not enjoying life? Why is life always so hard? So from a young age, I've never ever believed that we're meant to be here to do something that we don't love. We are meant to be here to have fun, to live in abundance in every manner. But we've been conditioned that is not right. We've been conditioned that we live in lack. But I've never believed it to be true, and I'm on the quest to find that way of living. And I'm there, but it pulls you back a while. But it would be nice for everybody to know that if you are suffering, it's not your natural default. And there's always an alternative, because it's not authentic living.
I love it. And that's our final thought.
That's a final thought.
That's a final thought to the Mind Management podcast.
Thank you for having me, Cuddy. Thank you.
Stick around, because we always have a little decompress after the podcast. But thank you very much to everyone for tuning in to the Mind Management Mentors podcast. As always, if it's in the mind, it can be managed. And as Susan, to echo what Susan says, suffering does not have to be part of our existence. Living in total bliss, I will say, is not possible, but managing that suffering to move you up the consciousness scale will bring you so much joy, love and light, which is what we try and do on a daily basis. As always, big love from Cuddy. And Susan, how would you like to say goodbye?
Lots of love. Sending everybody so much love. And you can be and do whatever you want. Follow your dreams.
Perfect.
Over and out.